We get to bring people joy with our music, and you see it. I can't let having a rough day get in the way of that.
So I was in San Diego last year, and this driver picked me up, and he was like, "Oh, I see you have a Metallica shirt on," and I was like, "Yeah, are you a fan?" And he goes, "Well, I wasn't," but he's like, "My son was a fan," and then he starts telling me how he gets into heavy metal because his son is into heavy metal,
Right.
and I just loved it so much because it's the exact opposite of how it normally goes,
Right. Sure.
which is your parents hate your music.
Right.
And they don't give it a chance.
Right.
And they shit all over it.
Yeah.
And he was just telling me these amazing stories about all the shows they went to. And I was like, even if he doesn't actually like it, it almost makes it better if he doesn't actually like it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like first off, it's cool that your son was into something you genuinely got into it.
Right.
But it's also cool if you didn't and you
Right.
just did the work. It's almost cooler if you did the work.
Yeah.
And how I was just thinking about how basically 99.9% of kids who are into heavy metal have the exact opposite experience as this kid did.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's interesting. Our fan base, as we move into legacy band territory,
That is a unique thing. Yes. Now.
You know, it's this coming summer, 2025. It'll be 30 years I've been in the band.
Whoa.
And the band was instrumental for about 6 months before me.
Okay.
You know, so they started in 94. So technically, I guess the band is already 30 years old, but without me, they're, you know, it wasn't a complete unit. So, but as we move into this sort of legacy territory, we're seeing more and more of what you're describing.
But this is the opposite of that.
Well, as far as families being involved.
No, that the new thing is, which I think is awesome at heavy metal shows, is parents who brought their children.
Yeah.
Particularly their young children.
But I have met people who have been turned on to our music by their kids.
Yes. No, I love that. That's my favorite thing in the bookstore when people come in and they're like, "Oh, my kid, you know, he was texting me like things from the Daily Stoic or whatever."
Yeah.
That openness to hearing what your kids are into instead of, you know, telling them what they're into sucks or whatever.
Seen and not be heard.
Yeah, totally. But yeah, it is cool. Like I took my kids, I took my son. That what's the show that you did in Sacramento? What's that festival?
Shoot. Not Uproar.
Whatever it's called. It was huge.
It's one of the Danny Wimmer ones. It's a huge one.
Yeah. So I took my son to see Iron Maiden.
Yeah, you told me you were going to go. Yeah.
So I took him, and then Judas Priest played first,
Right.
and then so my younger son, who I didn't think would care, got jealous, and so he's like, "I want to see a heavy metal show." And I was like, "Well, look, Judas Priest is playing down the street like next week." So I took them to see Judas Priest, which was.
Did you meet Rob?
I didn't. I just went as a regular.
Rob is a lovely human being.
His book's incredible.
I just bought it. I haven't read it yet. Don't kill me, Rob. But his first one. But the first time we met him, we were in Singapore.
Yeah.
And we were playing with Priest. And before the show, we saw Rob come out to do a little meet and greet. We hadn't seen him yet. And he looked like he could barely move. He had a cane. He was like, we're like, oh no, this is not good. I didn't realize that it was, he's kind of putting on an act, I think a little bit, but also the coat he is wearing, this leather coat with nothing but like metal embedded in it, literally weighs 90 pounds.
Yeah.
And so we see him with this cane and I'm like, oh, this is going to be a rough show.
He does the Willy Wonka thing.
Yeah. The Priest starts and he comes out and he's like, and like flying around the stage, and it's in Singapore, so it's incredibly hot.
Yeah.
And I'm watching Priest from side stage. I'm like, holy shit, he's killing it.
Yeah.
And then he went back into this little tent to change outfits or whatever, and I didn't see him. And then I'm watching Priest there doing an instrumental part, solo, blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden, I get this whiff of baby powder, and I feel this wet, sweaty hand laying on my shoulder, and then I hear this posh voice going, it's brutal, Randy. And I look, and there's Rob Halford sweating on me. He is the sweetest guy. If you ever get the chance to meet him, he is a true gentleman.
You know, I found in the books, I mean, I think now you have two, he has two, but I think when people think, oh, this is a book from a dude who's fronting a heavy metal band,
Yeah.
they're probably not thinking super thoughtful, super philosophical, super reflective. But I would say both of your books, but his are awesome.
Yes.
Just very deep, great books.
Yeah, he is a great dude. Always been just completely lovely to me, and has done a lot for, I think, acceptance in general.
I think he was probably the first person that I knew of that was sort of publicly gay that I cared about.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, because in sports, that's happened like in the last few years. Openly
Right.
gay male athletes is
Right.
relatively new. And then I'm sure there were actors and stuff, but that I either didn't know about or I didn't care about as a kid. But I remember finding Judas Priest's music, which was older than me, obviously, and liking it, and then finding out that not that he was gay, but that he was gay and nobody cared.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay, so this isn't a thing. Because in where I grew up and what people around me thought, people did care. Do you know what? Like, it was a thing that mattered. And there was something immensely freeing and I think positive about it being a low-key, non-important thing that was instrumental in shaping how I now go through the world.
Right. Sure. It was not overbearing, like, this is the sole facet of my identity
Totally.
you need to focus on.
Yes.
But it is incredibly funny in retrospect, before he, quote unquote, came out of the closet.
Yes.
To see, if you've seen the documentary Heavy Metal Parking Lot.
No.
Oh my God.
Wait, this isn't Downfall of Western Civilization?
No.
Oh.
Heavy Metal Parking Lot. You can find it on YouTube. It took place in Maryland. These people go to the parking lot of this big arena. I think it's the Capitol Center. And it's just 1980s dudes with mullets in the parking lot. It's getting ripped outside a Priest show. It's incredible. And they interview them. These two people who had a proto video camera or whatever. It's hilarious. You need to see it. But it is very funny to me that metal became sort of like super macho to a while.
Yeah.
And a lot of these styles, the leather and all that stuff, came from Priest.
Totally.
Which came from Tom of Finland. The whole, like, you might as well be in the Castro in San Francisco walking around looking like that.
Yes. Well, and also what the audience was interpreting as sort of heterosexual
lyrics,
macho love songs take on a different, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And which is, it's just funny that nothing has changed.
Yeah.
But what we perceive.
Your perception.
Yes. Yeah. And whether we're, it's funny.
Yeah.
It's just
super funny. Super funny.
Dude, and they have so many more songs than you think.
Priest?
Yes.
It's a huge catalog.
I know. No, I just mean, like, because Judas Priest, I think I've said this before, Judas Priest is a heavy metal band, but they also sort of predate heavy metal.
Right.
So they're just like a 70s rock band first.
Right.
So do you know what I mean? There's like these classic, they kind of go from classic rock to heavy metal, and now they're like a super heavy metal band.
Yeah.
And so you just kind of forget when they play live, you're like, oh, I've heard this. I didn't even know this was a Judas Priest song.
Right.
That sort of, yeah, of course, Judas Priest.
Well, there is an argument that Priest is the first heavy metal band. I love you, Rob, and I've heard him sort of claim it, but Sabbath, dude. But Sabbath did not refer to themselves as heavy metal. Rob and them they were like, we are metal.
Yeah.
We are metal. I love my metal. As Rob would say. It's very... This is metal.
Yeah.
This is what I am,
But I think both of them kind of, both Sabbath and Judas Priest, there is like there's sort of that 70s rock that segues into kind of 80s metal. And so what's the difference? You couldn't really.
It's really hard to divide. And dude, nothing will set the metal community afire like arguing what is metal, who was the first metal band. But I mean, I think it's Sabbath because, Iommi had his finger chopped off. He had to build these things down tuned. There's just like, that darkness.
Yeah.
So, yeah, man, it's cool. I the last time I was here, just came for a brief visit. We were talking about Maiden.
Yeah.
I think I told you about a couple of interactions that I had with Bruce Dickinson. And then the latest, I've been waiting to update you.
Oh.
We were in Brazil last year or year before. Last year, and went up. We were in this hotel, and our security guy, because you have to have security in South America, right, was like, do you want to go on the roof? It's on this skyscraper in Brazil. And I'm like, of course I do.
Yeah.
And because he knew the people who ran the hotel. And we go up there, and he's like, let's go down to the super private posh lounge. And I walk in, and who was there but Bruce Dickinson? And so I had a lovely conversation with him. Do you know where the Iron Maiden logo came from?
You mean Eddie?
No, the logo. The
The
way,
font?
Yes.
No.
Bruce Dickinson himself. I've been waiting to tell you this story.
I'm dying.
We were sitting there, and I know his son loosely, but we were talking about music and just had a great conversation. And somehow the iconic Maiden logo came up, and he's like, do you know where that came from? And I'm like, no. It came from David Bowie. There was a David Bowie poster for a record. It's on a record. You have to look it up. One of the guys in Maiden saw it in a record store window, and it's like, I like the font on this David Bowie record, and ripped it off, and that's where Iron Maiden's logo.
Wow.
Look it up.
Okay, I will.
We're podcasting already.
this is
Otherwise, I'd like Google it real quick for you, but. It's a true story from Bruce Dickinson himself. Had a lovely conversation with him. Great guy.
He's the best.
Yeah.
He was just on Rich Roll's podcast. I don't know.
Oh, really?
Heard. Yeah, it's like the only one he's ever done.
Yeah. When he was too busy fencing and flying and stuff.
Yeah, and I think also what's interesting about Iron Maiden is like I don't think they do any press at all because they don't need
have to.
Yeah, they're just like
We're Iron Maiden.
Exactly. No, it was really interesting. But okay, so we'll do one more heavy metal thing and then we'll get into this. But no, I want to talk about the book because it's amazing. Sure. But okay, so did you know that the expression? To me, this is a very Stoic idea because do you know what an eggcorn is? An eggcorn is like when you confidently mishear an expression. Like, because so if you hear someone say acorn, you might think it's eggcorn, right? Like, but like for all intensive purposes, someone might say, but it's out for all intents and purposes, right? You mishear the expression,
right?
But it still makes sense to you, so you think that's the expression. Yeah. So, did you know the expression is not "you've got another thing coming"?
The lyrics?
The expression. That's an expression,
right.
The expression is "you've got another think coming."
What?
Yes, the expression is "you've got another think coming." Which to me is classic Stoicism. Like you heard something, it's not, you have to think about it.
Yes.
Like you got another think coming here, man.
Right.
You got to think about this again. It's basically saying think again.
Right.
But they either misheard it or purposefully changed the expression to you've got another thing coming.
Right.
And then the song is so big that became its own expression. But there was an expression that predates it that is you've got another think coming.
Halford changed the course of history then.
I think so.
I'm going to ask him next time I see him.
Isn't that amazing?
That's crazy. I've always heard you got another thing. You got another thing
look,
coming.
You got another thing coming. That's like saying, hey, something's going to come, whatever. But the expression about like, hey, you're wrong and you need to think again here.
Wild.
Which is actually a great expression, which we could probably use more than the warning, hey, you got another thing. Like if you think I'm going to do that, you've got another thing coming.
Yeah.
But it's like, no. If you think I'm going to do that, think again.
Right.
Is actually the expression.
Amazing.
Isn't that lovely?
It is. It's totally awesome.
But you hear it enough times, or it makes sense to you in your mind, and it becomes what it is, which is, I think this, to me, one of the key Stoic ideas is like, your mind is not your friend. Or your mind is fucking wrong all the time.
All the time.
Trust, but verify.
Absolutely.
That's what Stoic philosophy is. You have the impression and you have the self-awareness to go, I get shit wrong all the time. I mishear things all the time.
Right.
I jump to conclusions all the time. I'm going to give this another think.
Let me stop, evaluate, and see if this is just my emotional initial reaction to the impression. You know?
Is this actually true?
Yes, that's something I have been focusing on in the first part of this year a lot in my journaling every morning. You know, really.
But that's even what journaling is like, let me think. In writing down my thoughts, I have to think about them again.
Yeah.
Right. Because when you have them in your head, they're just true. That's the sketchy thing about thought. They're just there, and by nature of you having them, they exist and for the most part remain unquestioned. And I think the fundamental practice of journaling fundamentally what journaling requires is you to articulate that thought outside of your head, and then you see how fucking stupid most of them are.
Right. Yeah.
Well, that's not true.
I kind of write about that at the beginning of the book, about questioning my own beliefs. You know, like, why am I holding these beliefs? What thoughts and occurrences have happened that have made me think this way, and are those valid still to this day? Because a lot of my sort of, I don't know, the way I view life has not changed much from when I was 18. The core of it, you know? And luckily, I think that stuff that I hold from those younger years is based in having a correctly calibrated moral compass, you know? So that's not like that has to shift, but there's a lot of sort of surface level judgmental things that I've been trying to really examine and think about and say, you know, is this just a costume that you've worn? Yeah. You know, or is this part of your identity?
Yeah, my sister-in-law was saying this once. She was saying, like, I was starting to get afraid to drive at night. And she was like, I don't like driving at night. I'm afraid of it. And then she was like, wait, no. My mother is afraid to drive at night.
Yeah.
And so she was just like, she had just sort of unquestioningly picked up an identifying belief that she didn't actually identify with.
Right.
But you say it to yourselves enough times and you act on it enough times, which is you drive less at night.
Yeah.
And so it becomes scarier and harder.
Yes.
It becomes part of who you are. But since it's not actually who you are at any kind of cellular level, you can discard it. Not easily. No. But if you do some work on it, you can go, oh, wait, this actually isn't true. And I can build the corresponding identity that says this is not true by acting on it over and over and over again until it becomes as true as the false assumption.
Yes, well, it's very interesting because you're bringing up the driving thing, and I've seen this happen with my girlfriend. She's from New York City, therefore does not drive, right? Yeah. Moved down south, and I'm like, eventually you're going to have to drive.
Yeah, you're going to need to get somewhere.
So we went car shopping, and I tried to get her even just like a Toyota with some safety features, and she's like, it's too big. So we got the smallest, tiniest car we get. Not quite a smart car, but almost. Yeah. It's like a go-kart. And so we drove around the neighborhood very slowly. And I'm a good driver teacher, thank God. Very patient, but we drove around very slowly. And then when I went on tour and came back a month later, she was like, I don't drive forever. I don't drive. I can't drive. I don't drive. And I'm like, you need to be able to drive.
Right.
Because we aren't in New York. And also, what if I got hurt or something? Yeah. And you need to carry me? This is a skill you can develop. I don't know. Yeah. I'm going to have to do it. And she was super anxious about it. Drove around the neighborhood a little bit. And then when I'm come back a month and a half later from tour, she's driving. Yeah. And I'm sitting in the car with her, seeing a very real sort of change in what she is. Yeah. In the manner in which she drives. She has become comfortable with it. Whereas before I'm like, you have to accelerate to get out of the turn. We can't go 5 miles an hour. Sure. But this was something she had told herself. Yeah. You know, like you were saying, again and again and again. And then seeing it change in real time, it's like you are a driver.
Yeah, you just have these assumptions about the world that you pick up as a kid. Like you said, like some of it's good, like the sort of moral compass of like, artistic integrity or your
Yes.
taste or how you treat people or whatever, that's all that, probably is stuff you don't want to change.
Well, taste is
You want it to evolve, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like you don't want to be someone who changes with every trend.
No,
like
God,
I
no.
like what I like, and this is what this is what lights me up. That kind of earnest, childlike excitement about something, I think you want to preserve. But then there's this other part where you're like, why would I put a 17-year-old in charge of something that they hired a 37-year-old to do?
Yeah.
Or like, I would never tell a 17-year-old they should have kids, right?
Yeah.
And I have kids, so I can't be that 17-year-old.
Right.
That 17-year-old and how they think about things and what they're capable of doing is not at all qualified or equipped to do emotionally what needs to be done here.
Yeah.
And so this process of going, hey, what are the scripts I have, the beliefs I have, the habits I have, the patterns I have that are part of whatever the child had to be to survive in the shitty high school environment, the contentious divorced childhood, household environment, whatever it was, whatever you had to become to make sense of the hormones swirling through your body or the things you weren't getting from parents or teachers or whatever, is almost certainly not what the situation you're in right now demands.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
No, absolutely not. I think about, you do develop certain, coping mechanisms and social skills at a young age, depending on the environment. But I think about just the things that were important to me when I was 16 years old.
Yes.
They were earth-shattering, Sure. And I look back on them now, and I'm like, oh my God, I wasted so much time worrying about this. But that is the nature of being 16.
Sure.
So, I think there's the environment kids are growing up in today is complex.
Yeah.
Compared to when we were little. Not everybody had a little supercomputer in their pocket, the pocket Jesus.
Well, the weird thing is I think it's the same environment that we were growing up in, just magnified enormously.
A million times. Yeah, amplified by this crazy digital thing. But when I feel myself getting judgmental towards younger people because they're upset over sort of what I view as obviously ridiculous things, because they are, I have to sit back and think on my own mentality at that time.
Yeah.
I was 16 once.
Yeah.
I cared about a lot of stupid shit.
Sure. Well, and you're not 16 and you still care about a lot of stupid shit. And so to me, that when I see people doing stuff like that, I try to go, what am I being stupid about? Not you're being stupid.
Yeah.
Right? Because fundamentally Stoicism is what do you control, and you're probably not going to bully someone into not being stupid about something, but you might have some success bullying yourself into not being stupid about something. I always find it remarkable how easy it is to see ego in other people.
Oh God.
as if, and then how insidious it is to see it in yourself.
Oh yes. Horrifying.
Exactly.
It's something constantly work on keeping in check. Constantly, especially being in a band.
Yeah, I would say being a lead singer is probably of a successful band. Maybe it's actually harder to be it in a not successful band. But there's something about it that is uniquely toxic to the ego.
Yeah.
It's like gasoline.
It also is a requirement a little bit, I think, to be the front man of a band, is to have a bit of ego, or
because you think I should be the one, I should be the main one.
Yes. I mean, not even, I don't know. It's interesting. I kind of became the singer of my band by mistake.
Yeah.
But you can't, to be a good front man, you have to have the willingness to get up and make an idiot out of yourself again. And besides a smidgen of talent, the only requirement to be a good frontman is the willingness to get in front of other people and make an idiot of yourself again and again and again until you get good at it, right? Yeah. And in order to do that, I believe there has to be a healthy amount of ego.
Well, that's why I think it might actually be worse for the ego to be in a failed or an up and coming band than a successful band.
Right.
Because a successful band, you can be like, you understand it's unhealthy and you can create some artificial distance.
Sure.
Right. You can be like, it's not about me, you
Yes.
know, I don't want to take it too seriously. You can sort of self-efface. There is, to me, where the ego is required in the sort of performative, whether it's sitting down to write a book and write a song, whatever, is the part of you that goes, everyone wants to hear this.
Yes.
When no one has asked for it.
Right.
Literally no one has asked for it.
Right.
And in fact, they're actually telling you for a good chunk of the time you're doing it, that they are fundamentally not interested.
Yeah.
Like you are getting rejected over and over and over again.
Sure.
And you're like, no, but this is really good and everyone needs to hear it. And that is the definition of ego, right? Like the rejection of the evidence
Right.
over your belief or faith in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think in that way, ego can be adaptive early on. The problem is it's so fundamentally maladaptive later on.
Yeah.
And this is, I think, the lead singers or artists or whatever that we know about that we would say is egotistical are the ones who are fundamentally stuck at how they were.
Yes.
Whatever they had to be the up and coming
Yes.
lead singer of Guns N' Roses, you are still
Yes.
the lead singer of Guns. You know,
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And we call it LSD, lead singer's disease. You know, he's got a bad case of the LSD.
Yeah.
I've managed to keep mine in check. The ones that I've seen where they have not changed, it's unfortunate because you see you're in this big band, but you're just miserable. You're a miserable human being. Luckily, the biggest singers I've ever met from the biggest bands have all just been so cool.
Yeah.
Living legends, you know, and they are a different animal on stage when they walk off just the most humble people you could ever imagine. And you know, I'm not saying I'm the most humble guy. I'm not the king of humility hill, as they say, but I try, you know, to definitely keep it in check because you turn into something no one respects eventually.
Well, the famous viral video of you where you're walking through and the security woman stops you and asks for your badge.
Mm-hmm.
And then someone says, do you know who this is? Basically. Ugh. And she's like, I'm so sorry. And you're like, no, you're doing your job.
Yeah.
That can be easy to forget. That, like, not just that everyone's doing their job, but like that her job isn't to make your life easier. Her job is to prevent people from going in a certain area that are not meant to be there. But when your life is built around green lights, mm-hmm. you can start to assume that it's always supposed to be green lights. And I think
what is this inconvenience?
And there's something helpful about being successful but not too successful. So where sometimes you get the green lights and sometimes you don't. Yes. You're able to go, oh, this is one of the times when I'm getting the green lights. It's nice but absurd. Right. As opposed to you get them all the time. I think you cross over to a certain level of fame or success, and then it's just the default all the time. That's where you get the don't look them in the eyes kind of a thing. And then it becomes normal and you lose instead of like sometimes you get an upgrade in life, sometimes you don't. Mm-hmm. If you sometimes get the upgrade, then you appreciate the upgrade because you know you were planning on sitting in coach, or you remember what it's like to sit in coach. But if it ceases to be the upgrade and it becomes the default, you take it for granted. And then there's a fragility there because when you don't have it, it feels like you're being punished instead of just not blessed. Right.
Yeah. I think that's one reason why I'm very grateful that the quote unquote success of my band has been a gradual thing. Yeah. We have not had this rocketing moment, you know, where we hatched out of a rock star egg or something. Mm-hmm. It's just been very much like this, slow incline. And the whole time we've been like, wow, people actually care. Mm-hmm. Like, this is amazing. And I think it's been a bit easier for us to stay grounded in that sense. Yeah. You know, I think when you're 21 years old and then all of a sudden you're headlining an arena. Yeah. I mean, I was an idiot when I was 21 years old.
No, it's bad for you.
And that kind of shit just. But
it's disorienting.
Yeah, and there I do have friends who are super famous, who are still very cool and who still do recognize that stuff, but they generally come from very humble backgrounds and have managed to remember where they come from. I think that's key. As you're saying, not just become acclimated to this like a life of convenience and adoration or whatever.
Yeah.
I've had so many fans be like, and I know they're just using it as a euphemism. I've said this since the beginning, and they were like, dude, you're a god. And I'm like, you need to pick a better deity. I am highly fallible, yes, temperamental, and, I suck, yeah, basically. And even just saying that stuff again, even in just a joking way, like correcting that expression, I think at least sort of keeps me in my place a little bit right-sized.
No, it's funny. Like some celebrities will be like, I can't believe you're talking to me while I'm with my family or whatever. Right. It's actually better for me when people recognize me when I'm with my family. First off, because it's never glamorous stuff that I'm doing.
Right.
But also my kids immediately make fun of me for it. Like they're bothered by it in the sense that it's not like an inconvenient, but they're just like, that's not how they see me.
Right.
And so it actually like levels it off
right,
in a way that, I mean, it's weird if someone wants to take a picture with you. I don't mean to judge them. It's a weird experience for you. Like right, you're just going through your life and someone wants to just capture that they were near you at one time. That's odd. And then it's like, I'm sure you notice it sometimes. If you're a perceptive or empathetic person at all, you're like, oh, this person is having a hard time even being in my presence.
Oh, dude.
Like this person is shaking.
Oh, yes.
And that's not something you should feel is normal to you. Like there's a Kissinger line where he says, one of the problems is that on the way up, you worry if you're boring people. And then you get to a certain level where people worry that they're boring you. Mm-hmm. That it shouldn't be normal that people are uncomfortable around you.
Right.
Because now you're not an equal person going through the world.
No.
And that's destabilizing, feeds the ego, and it just disorients you about who you are and what you are.
Yeah. I mean, it is my band. We've had so many times we've met people, or when I meet people, even just not with the band, just in my life, and they're shaking, and my girl will be like, I'll take the phone. I'll take the picture, because their hands,
they literally cannot.
They cannot operate their phone. I'm like, meanwhile, any other time they could land the space shuttle with this thing,
Right.
And my girlfriend's like, give me the phone. I'll take it. Yeah. And they're shaking, and I always just laugh.
Yes.
To me, I just laugh. I'm like, it's one of my favorite things to do is like, if they're really nervous, is put my arm around, taking a picture. Boo! Ah! Scream it. And then it just laugh hysterically because it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like it took me a long time to accept the fact that, and I write about it in the end of the book, the last chapter, for me to accept that like people are actually happy to meet me.
Yeah.
Right. I'm like, wow, they're happy to see me, and 99% of the time extremely pleasant. I can't see myself getting annoyed with people that I bring joy to.
Yeah.
Right. And touring and the band thing, it wears you down. But my guitar player Mark and I, for the last, I guess, year and we were on the same side. Before we go on stage, one of us will look at each other right before we go on stage, and we will say the same thing. We'll say, bring forth the joy. Bring forth the joy. We do it like that, though, And that is to remind us that even if we're having a crappy day, how cool is this?
Yes.
And we get to bring people joy with our music, and you see it. And that's, I can't let having a rough day get in the way of that.
Yeah, I tried to think about this because my first handful of books were very painful to do.
Yes.
Because I didn't know if I could do them, so that was scary, and I didn't have necessarily a financial security, so there's pressure.
Right.
But there's an expression, painters like painting, but writers like having written. and I like that expression.
Yeah.
I also hate that expression.
Yeah.
Like that's an expression that should not be true. That's a stupid expression to be true.
Right.
If you are getting paid to write a book, that should be pleasurable.
Right.
And if it isn't, writing is not to blame. You are to blame.
Right.
And so I've tried to me, the Stoic idea, if I'm enduring this unpleasant, painful thing so that it's worth it getting paid at the end,
Right.
or hitting a list at the end,
Right.
or winning an award at the end,
Right.
then what I'm not doing is Stoicism, because that is what I'm saying. I'm doing all this stuff contingent on getting some other stuff that's
Right.
not in my control.
Right.
And by the way, if you know anything about any of the entertainment industries, you very rarely do people get what they deserve. In fact, you get fucked over a lot.
A lot.
And so that would be insane for me to torture myself for the low percentage chance of getting something that's not in my control. And so I have tried to work on sitting down and going like, I get to do this today.
Yes.
This is fun.
Yes.
The book that I am saving into Dropbox when I'm finished for the day, that's the book.
Right.
And so that like, actually I'm not writing like, so when I save my drafts, every day I save the draft as a new file with that date in it.
Sure.
So I have a tracking of, I can tell when, if I wake up one day and I think I went on the wrong course, I can just go back in time.
Right.
Or I can find out.
I need to steal this from you instead of replacing the draft, which
Yeah.
I've been doing.
Also, if like a file gets corrupted,
Right,
or
sure.
some editor inserts something, I want to be able to know, like, okay, I was working on this when I was here on these dates, so I want to go back to that draft. So I say, but what I've come to see is that each one of those days is a complete book. So like, if I wrote today, sign that, save that draft, and then I got hit by a bus, that's the book.
Yeah.
Right. So an editor might work on it or whatever, but that's the book as far as I was able to finish on it.
Right.
And so I try to see every day as like a complete day. That's, I'm signing the book that day. It's done. And so it better have been, one, my best effort. Did I put everything in there?
Right.
And then two, it better have been worth it. Not, it was shitty and unpleasant, but it's all worth it for the album release party or whatever.
For this future cookie that may or may not arrive.
Yeah.
For me, I think there's something I because I write about it in that book too, about how writing is for me. It's tough, dude. Sure. Like at least nonfiction.
Yeah.
It's
well, if it was easy, everyone would do it.
Yes,
So of course it's hard.
There's a difference, I think, between difficult and awful.
Yes.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
And
or difficult and miserable.
Yes.
Difficult is the level of skill required. Miserable is the mood.
Right. Yeah, 100%. You're talking about this stuff. Each day is a complete day. For me, I will say, as I got closer to the end of the book, and this is just my horrible catastrophizing end, I became increasingly aware of my own mortality.
Sure.
And I'm thinking, I have to at least get this in a place where if I die, the editor can take it and put it out, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, not that would make any difference to me now that I'm gone, but I think...
They don't send you a galley.
No, they don't send me a galley in wherever I'm going. But it was... I guess it was because I'm trying to write something of worth, something that could be of service to someone. Mm-hmm. I felt... This is important, man. I need to get this done. And I had these weird, like, I'd be driving. I'm like, pay attention. Yeah. Don't get in a car wreck right now. You have to finish this book.
No, I don't think that. It's like, I think about it like an athlete, right? Like, because athletes are just shrunken down versions of our own mortality arc, right? Because like you only get to play for so long, and it's much sooner. The body goes before the mind as an athlete, right? And so at some point you lace up for your last game. At some point it's your last season. And every athlete I've ever talked to wishes that they'd enjoyed playing more. They don't wish that they'd tried less hard, right? In some cases, maybe they wish they tried more. But like enjoying it doesn't mean you don't try at practice. It means you're just not bitching at practice.
Right.
You're grateful that you get to practice.
Yes.
Because you are aware of the ephemerality and the inevitability of this ending.
Yeah.
And so I kind of think about it that way. So it's like, it's still really hard. It's still really taxing. I'm still exhausted. I'm still never sure if it's good or not.
Right.
But day to day, I'm not allowing myself to say, woe is me. This sucks. I have
to sit at my desk and be a writer.
Yeah. And I also don't allow it to give me a pass on my other responsibilities as a human being, because like, this is just one of the things that I'm doing.
Right.
So I can't, the fact that I'm writing doesn't justify me shuffling around the house in a grouchy mood because I'm the tortured artist.
Right.
Like, I just think the tortured put upon artist thing is bullshit.
Yeah.
And it's what you are putting on yourself. And you can not put it on yourself if you do the work to take it off.
It's a cultural mythos that is widespread, and I think a lot of artists worth their salt, if they mature enough, they realize the futility of this and the false nature of it. I mean, in my case, you're talking about the tortured artist. In my case, and in many of my friends, this sort of tortured artist identity manifested itself in a nice case of alcoholism or drug abuse.
Sure.
You know, and so then that's another component. And I look at some of these sort of bullshit I bought into as an angst-ridden young man, reading Bukowski, reading Hemingway, Hunter S. Thompson, Will Burroughs, all brilliant writers, right? And I'm sitting there reading this stuff and knowing about their lives because I'm fascinated by authors. And doing a lot of the things these great writers did. I did a lot of drinking. I did a respectable amount of womanizing. Got in a few fist fights even. Did some wild shit. I'm doing all the things that the great writers are doing, with the exception of one major thing. That is writing. Right?
Sure.
I'm practicing to be a writer, I guess. And it wasn't until I got sober, at age 39, that I was able to sit down and write a book. It was a few years after that, but I had the sort of mental fortitude. Some people build careers while drunk writing. I don't know how they do it. I built a career as a lunatic singer. That was easier to do for me. But there's that aspect of just, it has to be miserable, like the dark artist. I think good art does require some friction,
of course,
to a degree, but I don't think that means you have to be just this miserable, horrible human being.
When the idea that this stuff is like conducive to the creative process, it's like Hunter S. Thompson was like a zombie for the last 20 years of his life, like in a creative desert of his own making.
Oh yes,
and
Hemingway blew his brains out.
Yeah, like it cost them and us like decades of good shit. Yeah. And it turns out it wasn't like that. Like, is Kanye West a great musician because he's a raging egomaniac narcissist asshole? I don't think so. I think he's a great musician because he's a great musician.
He's a great musician.
Is Kyrie Irving a great basketball player because he's a wacko? No, he's a great basketball player who's a wacko.
Yeah.
And being a wacko has cost him and us a lot of great basketball. Yeah. Like, I have to imagine that actually Kanye West is very objective and clear-headed when he's doing music. It's probably the only place he's sane.
Yeah.
Because you can't make great shit out of your mind.
No.
Like, I think people totally learn the wrong lesson from Steve Jobs. Was an asshole who was also a great CEO and leader.
Right.
And those were disconnected parts of himself, and one often got in the way of the good parts of the self.
For sure. 100%.
Do you find you have a great line in the book, thinking about like when you're like, oh, woe is me, it's so hard. You had a great line in the book. You said, like, try spending a few months in a foreign prison.
Yes.
Does that kind of just turn down the volume on everything? Like when you went through that, you're just like, I'm not in a fucking Hungarian prison or whatever. Czech. I'm not in a Czech prison today, so it's a good fucking day.
Yeah. On my bookshelf, right by my writing desk, actually, there's a picture of that prison that I took, which if you look at the cover of my last book, Dark Days, it's a self-portrait they made me take because they want I did not want my own photo on the book, but but hey, I'm the singer in a heavy metal band. They're like, this sells books. So I when I had gone back for trial, I felt compelled to return to this prison because it was 137 years old and crumbling, this crumbling edifice. And I took this photo of the outside of the prison with barbed wire on it, and I saw this clock, which was the only clock I had for the whole time I was in there, this crumbling old clock that I would see once a day when they let us out into the yard. But I took this sort of out of focus picture of the prison. That's the cover of my book. I have a small print of that same photo, and it sits on my bookshelf where if I look up to the right, it's above me.
Yeah.
And it reminds me, hey, dude.
At least you're not in a Czech prison.
You almost did 5 to 10 in a Czech prison. You may or may not have come out of that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
You're here writing a book.
Yeah.
Don't cry.
This is the best possible timeline.
Yeah, this is the
expression.
best possible timeline.
Yeah.
You know, things, and I wrote about that in my first book. When I was in prison, I was like, you're in prison. This sucks. Your freedom may be taken from you in a foreign country for several years. You know where you're not? Afghanistan.
Sure.
You're not having people shooting at you, you know? You're not living in a Quonset hut and shitting in a bucket and eating MREs and having your limbs possibly blown off. Or, and you can apply that to basically anything. It's hard to, I don't know, reach a point where you're like, someone is not going through something else tougher than me. And for me, I will say though, going to prison in a foreign country it puts things in perspective, dude. It puts things in perspective. We were I was out on bail, right? And we had to go on tour pretty much immediately because I had 5 lawyers. Yeah. And they cost a lot of money. And this is Lamb of God, not Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
So we're touring and everybody's like, what are you going to do? I'm like, I'm going to go back to trial. What's going to happen? I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. And we're cruising around doing this tour, and it was like the last thing I wanted to be doing was, hey, is everybody having a good time tonight?
Right. Because you're not.
Because I'm not.
Yeah.
But think about me. But no one cares about that. My job is to get up there to make them have a good time. So we got through that. But at one point, I remember sitting in the back lounge of our bus, and my guitar player, Mark, dear friend, not the biggest fan of touring. He likes the studio. I hate the studio.
Right.
He loves it. I hate it. But he doesn't like touring. We're sitting there. And I guess I'd been out of prison about 2 months at that time, 2 or 3 months. And we're riding along and he's having a bad day. And he's like, this feels like prison. And I just looked at him and just kind of just smiled.
Does it?
And I'm like, really, dude?
Yeah.
And he's just, oh, yeah. I was like, this is not like prison, bro. Trust me.
Well, you're the guy, Wayne.
Wayne
your
Ford.
friend who you wrote a song about,
Yes.
who's dying of leukemia, and you shoot him a text, you're complaining about a rough day in the studio, and he's like, you need a tissue?
Yeah, this fan, his dad, who, I sent him that chapter. I sent Wayne's family. It's already been in the press. The first chapter of the book is called The Duke, named after a Lamb of God song, about this guy, Wayne Ford. And he was a fan I'd met, and was terminal with leukemia, but we would text each other and got to know each other during the last couple of months of his life. But I was in the studio and I hate the studio.
Right.
And I'm just like, he's like, how you doing, man? I'm like, I'd rather chew glass than go into this studio. And he's like, you need a tissue, dude?
Yeah.
And
Have you tried dying of leukemia?
Have you tried dying of leukemia? Bro, must be tough to be you. And I'm just like, oh shit.
Yeah.
Let me shut my mouth.
Sure. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that's the problem with suffering, is that there really are no degrees of it.
Yeah.
So like whatever you're going through is the most important thing in the world to you, and it takes on this enormous outsized significance.
Right.
Even though objectively, I think at some level we all understand it could be much worse, and we could be suffering much worse, and we have suffered much worse.
Yes.
My ankle hurts though. You know what I mean? And so, like, it's just hard. It's hard. And I think part of Stoicism is this process. That's what the journaling is about. That's what the exercises are about. It's just getting a smidge of perspective.
Yes. Trying to carry it forward, because it's easy every morning when I sit down with my daily Stoic journal, which I'm on number 4. This is the 4th year. And I have the leather cover.
Oh, you do? I was going to give you one. Okay.
No, I have one. I'll take one for my girlfriend,
All right.
though.
Sure.
I got her one. That every year, I sit down and I write this. Every morning when I write, I did it this morning, I try and carry sort of like perspective, give me a smidgen of perspective, and thinking about externals a lot into the world. And then something happens, and for me, it's always the more minuscule things. Like in a real crisis, I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm a calm level. I'm the dependable guy.
Yeah.
But if the computer stops working and I'm trying to edit a photo, it's like,
It's like if your arm got cut off, you'd be like, I need to get to a hospital. My arm is cut off.
Like the homie from Def Leppard.
And then if I cut my finger on this thing, I'd be like, fuck, my finger. There's something about the body and the mind are pretty good when shit really hits the fan.
Yeah.
Because we know we can't afford the nonsense.
Right. Yeah.
And so I sometimes try to catch myself when I'm freaking out about something or I'm not handling it well. I go, you're only acting this way because you have the luxury of acting this way.
Oh, that's a great way to look at it. It is a luxury. I was listening to Mark Maron's podcast with Bill Burr the other day in LA. I was driving in LA,
Great
which
episode.
And Bill Burr is talking the same sort of thing. He's good. He had to evacuate because of the fires. He's cool. Yeah. But like his toaster doesn't work and he's like, fuck, But he says, I say to myself out loud, you don't have to react to this. You don't have to react to this. I'm like, oh, that's good, Bill. He's a great dude.
We do that in how we treat people too, right? So like, you can't talk this way to a stranger because you might get popped.
You might get punched in your mouth.
Or if someone saw, you can't do it. But then you will treat people who will put up with you shitty. Do you know, like, I'm not saying you, I'm obviously we try not to do this, but the point is we are forgiving of strangers. And then, I'm like, why am I telling you again not to put your shoes here?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, sure.
Or like you'll tell someone like 5 times something at work, but then if your spouse or whatever says, what? You're like, ah! Seneca talks about how we rage against the good. Yeah. Because we can.
Yes.
Because we can get away with it.
Yeah.
And that's precisely who we should be the most patient with.
Absolutely.
And the most tolerant of.
Yeah.
And so there's something, I think it's similar. It's like, well, in situations where there's a cost to freaking out, we get over it pretty quick.
Yeah.
But when we can be self-indulgent, we're self-indulgent. And there's something self-indulgent about losing your temper, being rude, being frustrated, where you're just telling yourself that they're going to put up with it. And by the way, they're not. At some point they won't. And then you'll feel horrible. Yeah. And you'll regret it. And so just going like, hey, do I have the luxury here of indulging in whatever emotion?
Right.
And I think people think Stoicism is not having the emotions. No, you have the emotions. You just decide whether that emotion is going to color your behavior or not. Right. It's probably the same in recovery, where it's like,
well, there's a famous phrase that comes from the recovery world dealing with a specific emotion. One that I've had issues with is anger.
Yeah.
It's described as, anger is the dubious luxury of normal men.
Yes, you can't get away with it.
No, I can't let myself become consumed by rage.
You know what's beautiful about the expression that anger is the dubious luxury of normal men? Seneca says some version of that in his essay on both anger and clemency.
Ira?
Yeah, but his one on clemency is like, look, like, a regular person can afford to hold a grudge. Mm-hmm. A regular person can be petty and vindictive. Mm-hmm. But a person in a position of responsibility or power or influence there's the greater consequences.
Yes.
Right? And it falls heavier on other people. It no longer just
affects you.
Yeah, you know when they say anger is a poison you give to yourself?
Yeah.
Well, that's actually not true when you're in a position of leadership, right? Or a position of power or influence, because other people bear the consequence. If you, as the head of a band that has a large touring operation, decide to be petty and take your ball and go home,
It costs
a lot of people a bunch of stuff.
Untold people.
And so, yeah, just going like, hey, I can't afford to be petty and entitled and I can't afford this shit anymore because people are counting on me.
Yes, 100%. And like, that's something that, being in a band, in a successful band, like if we've ever had to cancel a show, it is always, it's like, you got to be half dead.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. I got horrific food poisoning one time in Vegas. Like I could not move.
Yeah.
And the last thing I remember was my tour manager asking me, dude, are going to have to cancel. I'm like, well, you could wheel me out there in a wheelchair and I could vomit and shit myself on stage. Yeah, we got to cancel. But it was like, it's such a horrifying prospect to me because people have spent money buying tickets. They've spent money on hotels, airplane fares. That's just the audience.
Yeah.
They have decided they're going to come to this thing.
Yeah.
And they've built their schedule around this.
Yeah.
And I feel a responsibility to those people. I also feel like, and that's another reason why when I go on stage, no matter how tired I am, I never phone it in.
Yeah.
Like I give it all that I can, while I'm there, because these people it doesn't matter how many people show up either. They've paid good money and taken time out of their schedule to watch you do your thing. You better do your thing to the best that you can. And then beyond them, if we have to cancel, then there's money for promoters. The
venue was still booked.
The venue is still booked. Like we employ a lot of people, Lamb of God does. This is how they feed their families. It's not a joke. It's the music business. People don't get that.
No, it is hard to take care of yourself in those situations because you have, and look, that's what being a leader or being in a position of responsibility is that you bear the cost of it. But yeah, I've had that where I've been like really sick and it's like I made a commitment,
right?
And the tension between taking care of myself and the show must go on is real, know, and sometimes it's what's actually the harder decision. Like what actually requires more self-discipline or willpower,
right?
The one to be like, no, I actually will harm myself permanently by doing it or whatever,
right?
Or the show must go on.
Yeah,
it's hard.
Yeah, very difficult. Something we've definitely struggled with.
Yeah,
learning how to say no is a tough one.
Yeah, right. Or just to say, hey, yeah, I'll do the tour, but I want to do it reasonably.
Oh, oof. That's something we've been fighting because, for years now, because a booking agent and a manager love our booking agent, love our manager. They're not the ones playing every night. They don't.
Yeah, look, their job is to make a profitable tour, not one that is good for your knees 20 years from now.
No. And my knees are shot.
Yeah.
Lower back is screwed.
Sure.
Jumping around like a monkey. Yeah.
I think it's funny. I've noticed bands used to play in Converse All-Stars.
Oh,
and now they all wear like the oldest man shoes you
Hokas.
can. Exactly.
Hokas.
It's so. I think it mirrors. Athletes used to smoke in the locker room, and now, but I think it's just funny watching them get more comfortable as they go.
Yeah.
Because there's a They realize that being the young person who looks cool. I'd rather be less cool and be able to do this for an extra 5 years.
For sure. Yeah. No doubt.
Yeah. No, it's deciding that you want to do this sustainably, whatever it is that you want to do sustainably. I don't mean environmentally. I mean, like, I want to do this for a long time. Yeah. Suddenly you go, I have to care about what I eat. I have to care about working out. I have to care about not doing drugs.
All
and
that
alcohol.
non-rock and roll stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, longevity isn't yours by right. You earn it.
No, yes, sir. Yes, sir. And that's all stuff that as I get older has come into play.
Yeah.
Watching the diet, quitting drinking and drugs, actually having to exercise now, which for guys like me and you, naturally thin, we can skate by for a long time. Sure. And then one day you wake up and you're like, oh, shit.
Yeah. No, if I want to be like I was before, I have to ratchet up certain things and ratchet down certain things.
Yeah, 100%. It's the balance.
Yeah, and it is, I mean, the type of music that you do, not that rock and roll was ever supposed to be an old man's game. I mean, I hope I die before I get young, or I hope I die before I get old. But at the same time, there's something a little different about what the Who did versus what you do.
Yes.
Or what, a real heavy, I mean, it's just different vocally, it's different musically, it's different. The sound that you're subjecting your body to, the sheer amount of decibels and the bass is more taxing.
Yeah, all of it.
Yeah.
It's
Metallica playing a stadium show is not the same as the Rolling Stones playing a stadium show.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
It's just not. I've never seen the Stones. I think about them a lot, though, as like sort of this paradigm of, as you say, sustainability.
Or is it an addiction? Do you ever think like why can't you, like, I think, like, I'm obviously a huge Iron Maiden fan, but I think it's interesting that Steve Harris has a side project that he tours clubs with.
Right. Well, see, I actually,
this
is something that's thinking. I think you and Pressfield were talking about this on the podcast one time.
It's either lovely or it's sad. Do you know what I mean? And I don't know him enough, so only his daughter or his spouse could tell you whether it's a good thing or a bad thing.
Yeah, that's true. But I would look at it as a musician. If he loves playing music.
Yeah, sure.
And like, I love playing music, and I'm going to do it as long as I can. It may not be with Lamb of God when I'm 70 years old. That might be a wee bit much, but I'm going to be doing music. And yeah, I would go out and do a side thing. The Rolling Stones are not out touring still after however many years because they need to.
Right.
They want to, dude. You love making music, and I know for me, and you love making music with a specific group of people, like.
But is there something about the not is there? And again, I don't know any of these people, so I'm talking about this more generally. But there's something that draws one to the arts that is the desire for an audience, right? You know what I mean? Like,
yes, but I think for long term, it's a need to express yourself through whatever specific facet of the arts it is.
Sure.
You are drawn to that, and it feels natural to you.
Yeah.
Like, it feels natural to me to express myself with my band. It's something I've said this a million times. We love our audience, and yes, we make records and make a good living off this and tour the world and all this stuff, but we love making music. We had zero plan for this to become what it is.
Right. Sure.
We just wanted to make some good music because it's awesome making music. It's awesome.
Well, you mentioned Mark Maron earlier, and he talks about this thing that I relate to, or I think it posed an interesting question that it's worth asking as an artist. He said during the pandemic, when no one was doing stand-up, and he wasn't doing stand-up,
right,
and he was just in his house being a person,
yes,
he was like, maybe I'm all better. Like, maybe he's like, I don't need it anymore.
Oh,
maybe,
right,
you know?
right.
And,
yeah,
and
that's right.
That's what I'm saying, that there is, like, obviously I like writing and I like doing books. You could also zoom out and go, clearly, though, at some level, there's an element of compulsion here because you can't not do it. Right. And the Stoics ask us to be suspicious of anything that we can't not do.
Right.
And so I'm always fascinated by, okay, you have all the money in the world. You have a huge you still do play regularly, but then you're like squeezing it in on nights and weekends, the extra. Is there some part of us that you can't stop? And, it's not, you go, oh, he loves music. That's why he's performing. That's why he's touring 150 nights a year and then also touring an extra 50 nights a year. There's a cost to that also, to people other than you. Right. And so I'm interested in that, the part of us that I'm not interested, suspicious of the part of us that can't not do the thing.
Right. I understand that. I don't think though, honestly, if the dude loves playing music that much, that's what he wants to do. He's okay with it. Let him play music.
No, that's what I mean. It's either amazing or it's sad, right? It's like
I'm a optimist. Regrettably, I'm gonna go with it's amazing.
But see, I wonder if that's because you love music. But like, if I was describing to you a boxer who just loves boxing,
right,
and he just wants one more fight,
right,
you'd be like, bro,
there's a difference between getting punched in the head by Muhammad Ali than playing the whatever pub in Birmingham.
But, but the impulse is similar. The love of the thing, like
but the consequences is highly different. For me, sometimes it's almost been the same. Smash.
You get what I mean. The love of the game can also, at some point, it either curdles or it becomes a compulsion. You can't stop it. And at some point, inevitably, every boxer retires one fight too late. And, Tom Brady retired one season too late.
Right.
Per, the damage to his family and other things. Right. Like you take it one, I think that is an endemic part of that same ego, drive, passion. This is why the Stoics say passions are dangerous. They can burn you.
Yeah.
You love the thing and you love it at a fundamentally illogical, unhealthy level.
I just don't think that comparing music and sports and things like that, I think it's apples and oranges.
Maybe.
Maybe the compulsion is the same, but we all have things we're attracted to, and maybe it's a matter of the lesser of two evils. I just don't see, you see blues legends who played forever. They're old men, down on Beale Street in Memphis.
Still. Yeah, but those people had children and grandchildren.
Sure,
they had other things.
But they were still musicians when they did it. Right?
No, but what I'm saying is that there's a cost to going on the road and picking up those dates, right?
Sure.
And there's things that are neglected in the pursuit of that, lovely as it is.
But is there a cost? This guy has how much money?
Yeah.
He has his own tour bus. Maybe his family comes with him. Maybe they were raised on the road. Mm-hmm.
But I even think individually, right? Like there's something about, and I this is sounding like I really have some theory that this particular person is a
miserable.
Which I don't.
Addicted, club addicted.
Because I'm just looking at him to look at myself, right? And looking at all these people to look at myself, which is. There is something in a way that's easier about being on the move and doing
100%.
Like writing, even on its toughest day, is easier and better for me than regular life because I'm a master of it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a fake universe I've constructed.
Yes. Yeah.
And
we live in La La Land. We say that on tour all the time. This is not the real world.
I can feel like if I'm in an argument with my spouse or it's crazy at home or I'm not feeling good about this or that, I'd be like, I want to get to the fucking office.
That's right.
You know, you feel almost like you would crave a drug because you're like, I will feel good doing that.
Yes. Yeah. For sure.
And so that part of a work addiction is fundamentally rooted in escapism and not feeling what it is to be a person, which is to say uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And lots of feelings.
Yeah. Work is, touring is definitely La La Land. It's definitely not reality. We say that all the time. I mean, where else do I go where there are people waiting to see me and they're super stoked. Oh my God, it's you.
Yeah. And that's the only thing you have to do that day. Yeah. That's one of the, when I speak, I got two tomorrow. It's I have to do 2 things tomorrow.
Right.
I am exempt from essentially all other responsibilities
Right.
as a person.
Yeah.
And that's nice. That's not real.
No.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because like if I get anything else done, if I make my kid breakfast, if I drive him to school, I'm like, people are like, you also did that? You know, like they want to throw you a fucking parade. You know, they're like, you worked out today too? You know, or whatever. Like you didn't just roll out of bed, you know? So
To be Ryan Holiday.
yeah, it's not real. It's not real.
Yeah.
It's all you have. So that, and there's something about the rhythms of being on the road too that are nice and soothing.
It used to be way more difficult when I came off the road to readjust to normal
Re-entry?
life. Yeah, dude, because it's like a train that's going and you're on and you're not really driving. You know, you're just going, and everything. There's a schedule, and dinner's at this time, and you're on stage at this time, and these people will be stoked to see you, and it's going to be this cathartic sort of like physical and emotional workout every night. Yeah, then you come down, adrenaline. It's this train and just building, and all of a sudden, bam! It hits a brick wall, and you're at home, and your girl is like, the lawn needs cutting, and you're like, fuck! Like it's like and
it's like you just can't. This isn't a hotel, man.
Yeah.
Like, you can't just throw your shit all over the place.
No. And, I'm pretty tidy though, but like it just emotionally, it was very, very strange for a long time to go from 100 to 0 in one day. You know, boom. Now it's a lot easier for me.
Yeah.
I've like, you know, learning to separate, as you're saying, recognizing what's real, what isn't.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to put this all, I think we were talking about, you know, it's not as bad as being in a Czech prison. But I think that the exercise of memento mori puts all that stuff in perspective too, right? You're like, hey, this is my only day. How am I going to spend it?
This is it.
Yeah.
You know, remember, you too shall die.
Yeah, you gave me this thing.
Oh yeah.
Have you seen those? I like to look at cemeteries. I like the cemetery where it shows what the person looks like. Like it's a like, instead of being, you know, them as an angel or whatever, it shows like a skeleton. And the idea is like the expression is what you are, I once was. Yeah. What I am now, you will be.
Yes.
And so they're called skeleton tombs or something. I forget. There's a Latin expression, but the idea is like, instead of the grave representing this peaceful, serene, gentle thing, they want to show the sort of the decomposition and the tragedy and the decay of it, because that's in you also. And you are on your way to becoming that very thing. Yeah.
Most certainly. It's like Alexander the Great and his mule driver.
It's one of my favorite lines in meditation.
Yeah.
Both died and both buried in the same ground. They're both fucking worm food, is what he's saying.
Yeah, 100%. Have you been to the catacombs in Paris?
Not in Paris, but I've been to a bunch of different catacombs.
Right, yeah. We went last time. It's got a lot of photos, and they had lots of great sayings up there on the walls in different parts.
There was a church in Dublin that has a crypt underneath it, and you walk in, and it's because of the temperature and the depth, it perfectly preserved these bodies that were buried in there. And they took, they slid the stone off the coffin, and you can see they're basically these natural mummies. And I was telling my kids this because they didn't believe it's true, but that you used to be able to go in. I went 12 years ago, and they let you touch the mummy.
Whoa.
Like its hand is there, and you can rub its finger.
Wow.
And so you're touching what you will one day be.
Wow.
And the jolting feeling that you get there, and you're like, this person died in the fucking Crusades.
Wow.
Is not just this guy died in the Crusades, but this guy was so abnormally tall that to fit him in this casket, they broke his legs to fold it under him.
Right.
And
one size casket.
You're like, you're done, man. You don't need to be comfortable in here.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
It reminds, there's another quote, came from a Roman poet, similar to that line from Marcus Aurelius. He says, in life, the world could not contain Alexander's ambition. but in death, a coffin was sufficient.
Oh yeah.
And so you could want to be the biggest musician in the world, the biggest whatever in the world. You could be fucking physically imposing and intimidating.
Yeah.
And then your ashes are like a fucking coffee cup.
Yeah. I write about that in the first chapter too. Kind of like how in considering our own deaths, for some people, I believe this may be a rude shock to you. You are no better than the piece of roadkill you pass by. In death, you're no better than the person you made fun of in high school. All this other stuff. We're all going to be equally dead. Mm-hmm. Conversely, if you're suffering from an inferiority complex, take comfort in the fact that you will succeed effortlessly at being as perfectly dead as the greatest men and women of history,
Or the nice way to the more inspirational way to put that is, you are as equally alive as the greatest people on the planet.
Yeah, this is true.
You have as much life in you as the most powerful, richest person in the world.
Yeah.
Pleasure feels the same. The air tastes the same. Mm-hmm. It is what it is. This is all there is.
Yeah, this is it. Enjoy it while it's here. I think, no one is not breathes any better than anyone else.
Unless you have asthma, I guess, maybe.
Well, we're talking permanent, not breathing.
Yes. No, right. It's the great equalizer in the end. It's the one prophecy that never fails.
Yeah. And
once it happens, it's done.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's going to happen to everyone.
Yeah.
I think that's. Do you see that documentary on Netflix about the dude who's trying
Brian,
to? Yeah. Like it's interesting, some of it, like theoretically what they're trying to do, but
you know what I think when I think about guys like that, guys that think they want to live forever, they spend all this money on this longevity shit. One of the Roman emperors is walking by. They're executing some heinous criminal who's wasted his life being awful, and the criminal sees him and he says, please spare me or whatever. And the emperor says, I didn't know you were even alive. Like he was saying, so you're really alive, are you? That's what he says. Like the point is, your existence, the thing you're begging to be given a second chance at, is not that great. Yeah. And I think about, there's something fundamentally funny to me about that guy's life doesn't seem that amazing. He's not making an argument why his life is so great,
right,
that he should live forever or he should get another 50 years because he's going to put it to such great use. Mm-hmm. What he's saying is, I'm going to make my health really good. Yeah. That's his argument. Yeah, his argument is, my health should entitle me to more years. Not the quality of my life is worth preserving. Like, there's never this much. And look, life is life. And I feel like everyone is entitled. I think healthcare should be a human right. I think absolutely. Anytime we can improve the longevity of the population as a whole, that is a wonderful blow to strike for justice. So that's not what I mean. But I think it's funny that the people that are most obsessed with living the longest strike me as pretty miserable people. Yes. And pretty self-absorbed people. Yes. That I'm not so intrigued by what they're going to do with this extra time, because I know the answer is basically just more self-indulgent nonsense.
Yeah. Well, I love vampires.
Yeah.
Huge vampire fan, and will take my hand at writing a vampire novel one day.
Go for it.
But the depictions of vampires, their immortality,
is a curse.
It's never good.
Yeah, no, it's a curse. Yeah.
Never good.
It's a curse. Yeah.
And I can't imagine. I would not want to live another 100 years. No way.
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah, it's like he sucks his blood from his son or whatever, the guy in the documentary.
Yeah.
And it's like, I think it's supposed to go the other direction.
Yeah.
Like, do you know what I mean? Like, he's not like, I've decided to put all this time and energy into helping my son live forever because I just love him so much.
Right.
And I'd be devastated if anything happened to him.
Right.
He's like, how can I suck the youthful energy out of my boy? It's being a parent is supposed to make you shift your priorities in precisely the opposite direction, bud.
Yeah, he donated some to his father, some of his plasma, but then it's kind of like you're taking your son's life. That's what hopefully the presupposition that your son will one day have kids. Is he supposed to just continually drain them? You know, you're breeding youth fountains or whatever.
Yeah, there's a Zen saying, grandfather dies, father dies, son dies. This is a happy story. Because that's how it's supposed to go.
Yeah.
And yeah, look, this starts to get pretty metaphysical pretty quickly, but I think the whole point is that there's no point if we don't die.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be, that's what creates the urgency and the clarity and an infinite game means you get an infinite number of tries.
Right.
And that's not what life is. Life is a finite game.
Yeah. 100%. Even take it to like video games with the cheat code and you just live forever. Like, that's no fun.
Well, look, if you were going to live forever, you could have done drugs longer. Why'd you quit at 39?
Because I was not living. I was utterly miserable.
Right, but the idea that you only have one life to live is the reason to not waste any more fucking time.
Right. Yeah, that's one thing that I think about when I find myself growing nihilistic, or when I see people who are just utterly cynical and about everything and nihilistic. I mean, I think cynicism is refuge of the intellectual coward myself. But it's like, okay, suppose everything is pointless and meaningless. Why don't we enjoy right now? And I've found that I get the most enjoyment out of trying to maintain a correctly calibrated moral compass and doing the right thing. Yeah. So if nothing matters, why
be an asshole?
Why be an asshole, right? If
it
nothing matters
to you. Yeah. To me, that the argument of Stoicism is not, hey, if you do this, don't do that, whatever, you're going to go to hell.
Right.
It's that if you do this or don't do that or whatever, if you sin, your life is hell.
Your life is hell. You're living in hell now.
Yeah. Which we know is real.
Yes.
The other one might be, but we know this hell is real.
Yeah.
Because we felt it.
Yeah, 100%.
This was awesome, man. I loved the book. It's great.
Thank you so much.
I'll walk you through the bookstore. I got some books for you.